axle polishing workshop. Axles and their smoothness is going to be your single biggest contributor to speed in a Pinewood Derby. Weight balancing and aerodynamics are important too, but this is going to be where you get the most of your speed. To start, we're going to talk about what is a flat axle. That's important to have. If it's bent, if it's wobbly, that's going to cause your wheel to bounce around. That's not good. Go over here to the drill press. I've artificially made one of these crooked. And so a good way to test if it's flat or not, by putting it into the drill press and turning it on. See how that bend is swinging around everywhere? That's a pretty clear indicator of it being crooked. It likely won't be that extreme. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. If we change this out, the one that I found earlier that was pretty smooth, or pretty straight, correct myself. That is an in there straight. You need to make sure the axle itself is in there straight. If it's bent, it's going to wobble around regardless. Look at that. Very little wobble. That's an ideal level of straightness for an axle. Another way you can test it is by laying it down on a flat table. Wood isn't good for this, but it's the table that we have right here. But if you sit on the table and roll it, I'll use the bad one again, you'll be able to see when part is raising up or there's light shining in from underneath. You want to look at it from the edge. Easy ways to fix that, or easy ways to remedy this are either A, if you select about 20 or so nails and look at them for straightness, about 8 of them in general should be straight enough to work with. You can also, if you don't have that, using a flat screwdriver and a hammer and like a vise, you set the flathead on the point of the bend, and then use the hammer on the axle. It'll straighten it out some. That's a pretty slow process. It's hard to get it exact, but that's a worst case scenario. I do recommend though putting a cloth in between the axle and the screwdriver, just because you're going to be putting notches in your screwdriver. They're just going to have to butt out later. So just be cognizant of that when you do that. Once you're done with that, the next thing to notice, and everyone can take one of these nails here. These are just 1 1/4 inch, number 17 nails. Sorry. If you look at it, if you flip it upside down and look at the head of the nail, if you rotate it around, you'll see on either along the diameter of the nail at some point, you'll see little grooves. You want to get rid of those. That's from the stamping process of making these. If your wheel rubs against that, that's going to be lost energy, creates more friction. The way you do that is by putting this back into the drill press right here. And you're going to want to take a square file like this, just run it up along the edge of as the drill press runs. That will help file it away. Once you're done with that, if you want to go an extra step further, you can taper your the head of your nail. So rather than being rectangular, if you get the edge of the, if you taper the face of the head towards this side of the nail, you can also help reduce friction that way, just because that's a less surface contact with the wheel when it's running. And that's all just done with this flathead file. Another step you can do, if you want to, it's a little bit extra, but it does show benefits. If you get a smaller file, kind of thin like this, once you're done with removing the taper, adding the taper, you can add a little channel inside your nail, and that will reduce even more surface contact with the wheel and the axle, but it can also act as a little reservoir for your lubricant, whether that be graphite or some other material. So that helps with adding more speed as well. And just like before, it's a matter of putting it in the drill press, and it's a good idea about 1/8 of an inch away from the head of the nail is kind of the sweet spot. Once you've done all that, removing the burrs from the head of the nail, adding a taper if you want to, adding a little channel if you want to, this is where most of your time is going to be spent polishing your axles. You want to start with about, I want to say 400. Let me double check on my notes. Yeah, 400, and then go as high grit as you can. This is actually not 400. I just picked it because it was the ideal size and shape, and I didn't want to open up these packages. But you want to cut it about that thin, half an inch, 3 or longer inches. And then the important thing is to make it wet. So just like dip in water. Turn on your drill press. And the other reason why I picked this is because you can see where it was polishing it, or polishing. This is a high grit, so if anything, it kind of loaded it up more. But if you want to get up close, you can see. You want to go along the axle as high as you can. I didn't go as high as I can, just for demonstrations. But as far as reasonable for making sure your wheel doesn't hit any unpolished surface. And so at that point, you're just going to keep going up and up, higher and higher in increments, starting with 400, going up as high as you can. Some people sell 4,000 grit sandpaper. It's also known as metal polishing paper, if I remember correctly. Because once you get into those high grits, it's all for metal. They don't make wood sandpaper for wood at that high grit. But we have some high grit sandpapers right here. Up to 2,000 of these packages. These are assorted. I haven't cracked into them yet, but you have at least 2,000, which is nice. Again, always make sure you use water when you do this. And the final step is you want to use this stuff right here. This is called Blue Magic Metal Cream Polish. It can come in a tube or in a tub like this. You're going to get a little shop rag. And you're going to want to get a dollop that's just about this big right here. If anything, that's a lot for what we're doing. Once you have this on your little piece of soft, shop towel or rag. At this point, you want to make sure your rag is soft because we're getting to such a fine level of polish that it can actually, the abrasiveness of the towel can mar up your nice polish if you're not careful. Just a matter of turning it back. We're going to do that for about 30 to 45 seconds. As you can see, because I had excess cream, it didn't transition as fast, but it will start to turn black when it's getting ready to be done. So once all the stuff, especially on the nail itself, has all turned black, you're ready to wipe it off. And because we marked this up with the high grit sandpaper, it doesn't show right here. And it wouldn't even show if you took a fresh nail right now. But I have a photo on my laptop that I can just show you all. And it gets really, really polished if you get it polished enough. And here's an example of that. So like that's what you're going for right there. You can see the difference between what started and what finished. One more step, that's all to do with metal polishing. The other step that can go with prepping your axles is that if you look on, you all want to get another nail again, if you don't have one. At the very tip of your nail, you'll see it has about 4 faces where it comes to the point. At the edges of those faces, there are some little birds. And you want to just take what little file, and you don't even need to put it in the drill press. You can just file it off like this. Ideally, you don't want to go too high up the shaft of the nail because, again, that will mar up where you're going to be polishing and it just makes more work for yourself. But you just want to get rid of those little burrs because any extra material that's kind of broken into when you're putting it into the block of wood is going to mean looseness in your axle. And loose axles mean it's wobbly, and again, bent axles mean wobbliness, and wobbliness means lower speed. And that's about it with the axle polishing workshop. Also, are there any questions? No?
I think so.
Okay.
That's great.